Cyber Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analysts, that's namely me, Rory Duncan.
And me, Christina Richmond. This podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. Hello, Rory. How are you?
Hey, Christina. I'm good, thanks. How about you?
I'm good. It was quite entertaining to chat just before recording about Ayurveda.
Yes.
And Rory has shared that he's a Vata and thinks that I'm a Pitta.
Main character energy, definitely. Yeah.
But so, actually, what we're going to talk about in this episode, we will be covering an initiative to push for the adoption of SBOMs, Software Bill of Materials, to help bolster application security. Now, everything old is new again. When I was at IDC, we had a prediction, it's probably 5 years ago now, that SBOMs would be front and center the next year. Here we are again.
Yeah, here we are again. Good old IDC. It only takes 5 years for prediction to come true.
For any analyst, probably.
Probably. We'll also be looking at how you can earn some money. So if you fancy a cool $10 million, yes, stay tuned to see how identifying and locating cyber criminals could net you a hefty reward from the US government.
And then we have a terrific guest coming up on the show. His name is Chris Newton-Smith. He is the CEO of ISMS Online. And we're going to be chatting with him about the importance of compliance and AI. Both are hot topics on the show.
They are indeed. Great. So before we do the news, Christina, we should probably remind the listeners about our free monthly newsletter called Signal Not Noise.
Yeah, and we've gotten some new subscribers to whom I've sent the 4-page extract that we promise from our recent AI security survey update. And so, if you subscribe, you'll receive our newsletter on a monthly basis. And you'll also, as a thank you for subscribing, get the 4-page extract from this survey that looks at how prepared CISOs and the C-suite and senior IT practitioners are in facing AI-powered attacks and what would help them prepare. So please sign on if you like. You can go to richmondadvisorygroup.com down at the bottom of the homepage, and there's a little box that you can put your email in, and voila, you will be a recipient of the newsletter.
Great. Thank you, Christina. So the first news story we've got, Christina, is an interesting one for a number of reasons. I think you perhaps mentioned earlier on that what was old is new and what's new is old again. And this is from Security Week, which is on the topic of software bills of materials. So the US and allies have been pushing for this for quite some time, but it's a new initiative to push for software bills of material to bolster cybersecurity. As I mentioned, protecting supply chain has been a much discussed topic for us and for many others for a long time, but it seems to have kind of come back round again, and it came up a lot at RSAC. And I really like this initiative. It takes me back to my product management days when you really had to know exactly what was in the box, quote, literally in the box, physical bill of materials, right. Every single item, where it's from, how much it cost, where it was going, how it was being sourced, etc., etc., etc. So I thought this is interesting. It's again not new. So what do you think about this one? I know you mentioned this before.
Yeah, we predicted it years and years ago that it would be a thing. But the problem with the prediction and the problem with the framework that CISA has put out as of yesterday, which is great. I'm happy to have it out there and to have it be the suggestion. And it is an alliance with many other countries. So I'm very happy to have this out there. But the problem is that it's hard. It's difficult. We already have our controls around TPRM, the third-party risk management, where we're trying to get our arms around supply chain and who are those companies and which widgets or software or capabilities are we incorporating into our own business from them. It's already difficult to track that and monitor that. It's not a bad thing to have a framework. Thank you very much. I'm glad that this shared vision of software bill of materials has been published. You can go to CISA.gov to see it. But I also think it's something that while it improves visibility, it also increases complexity. So it's a good thing, but yet again we have the overlay of bureaucracy, the overlay of frameworks, the overlay of regulatory control. Not that this is regulation, but it's leaning in that direction. And it's all for good, it's good reasons, but on the other hand, I can hear the vast sigh reverberating through the CISO community because they're like, oh, I already have to do TPRM. I already have to put the questionnaires out to all of my supply chain vendors to make sure that they're adhering to the things that I find important. And now I have to do SBOMs.
Yeah.
But hey, like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's just another thing.
Yeah, I know. And this came up, the sort of challenge of doing another thing when we've been talking about the importance of looking at security measures built in correctly at the development stage, right? If it's done well at the development level, at the code level, then that offsets and stops many of the issues that happen later on. It's just sort of similar, right? If you can ring fence, close off, protect those individual components of your software, then potentially that also has beneficial effects. But you're right. Where does it stop? Ultimately, it doesn't, right? If it's at the development, the code stage, if it's at the software component stage, if it's the APIs, if it's the third-party applications that it interacts with, etc., 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 if it's for a whole platform, it could take a long time before those things are signed off.
Dare we say if agents are involved? Dare we bring the agentic AI question in and say, what if the agents are building the software on our behalf?
Yeah.
Now, it may get better. It may, because it may be one of those steps that cannot be, passed by. So we'll see. We can ask next week's guest, Rock Lambros, as we talk with him about agentic AI, what he thinks about software bills of material and how he feels the agents might handle that.
Yeah, that will be an interesting discussion. So next story, Christina. Do you fancy a cool $10 million?
Always. Do you have it in your back pocket? Are you going to share it with me?
Not really. However, if you can find the whereabouts of certain individuals that are listed on the US State Department's Rewards for Justice website, that's rewardsforjustice.net. It's part of a national security rewards program set up in 1984. For the purposes of this discussion, it covers terrorism and various other things, but includes coverage of those doing malicious cyber activity. So they're looking for information that identifies or locates any individual who, while acting at the direction or under the control of a foreign government, aids or abets a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And that includes, for instance, foreign election interference. Now, when you go on the site, it's like a kind of a shopping list of these individuals as well as small groups of people with a dollar value put against identifying where they might be. I was going to say there, it's kind of staggering, but at the same time, we know that the power of anonymous tip-offs as well as other intelligence gathering can be very useful and very helpful for investigations like this. So I didn't know of its existence. Perhaps you knew about this?
I know about bug bounty. I have heard of rewards for justice, but I haven't really gone on the site as you have. And I'm glad that this article has called attention to it for you and others. And I immediately thought of some hacker friends. Now, they're good hackers. They have been the not so good cyber criminals maybe in their past history. And they've reformed. And so I immediately thought of ringing them up and saying, did you know? You could get a cool 10 million if you can go find Pavel, Mikhail, and Marat, 3 Russian Federal Security Service officers, and But my question is, and maybe you know this and maybe not, but do they say why now? Do they say why they're specifically looking for those three individuals in the FSB now?
Well, uh, each individual or group has a kind of a bio, kind of infamous bio on this site, which says what they have done or alleged to have done or been convicted of in absentia. And these particular individuals are said to have targeted more than 380 foreign energy sector companies in 135 countries. So these three individuals target US and foreign oil and gas firms, nuclear power plants, renewable energy firms, utility and electrical grid entities, etc., etc. Now, a lot of this will be as a result of the conflict in Ukraine, right?
Yes.
Clearly, but it probably points to a number of ongoing cyber attacks on physical and critical infrastructure. I think it's probably got to the level now at which having, or let's say reminding folk out there that this site exists and these rewards exist, just to try and get some additional focus on it, because rather than doing it from a for kicks purpose or purely for getting some cash or doing a lone wolf type of attack, these are organized, designed to take out large sections of critical infrastructure across many countries, and therefore it's become something quite serious.
Well, and what's interesting is the theater that plays out politically and in the media regarding the Russian and American leaders and how they can be seen as great friends in one breath and then they're adversaries in the next. And so I go to my suspicious place of, is this just more theater? Yes, it's real. The FSB's Center 16 unit has targeted these American and foreign energy firms and plants and whatnot, and that is scary and dangerous. But it also, why now? So it's just the skeptic in me wondering, but hey, if you can find these three individuals, you can collect the 10 million and good on you, I say.
And there's also like a whole list of others, groups, individuals on the site. You just select which tab you're looking for, which it was almost like Amazon for for these bounties, terrorists on one tab, cyber criminals on the other, malicious cyber activities on another. You just click through to see what you want. So,
well, I do know from studying the bug bounty market for quite a while in my past that there are people who really make a good living doing just this. And I don't know if they get the cool 10 million, but they certainly make a good annual amount of money through lots of different bug bounty programs. And so this is just one more that they could be paid through, which I'm sure many are already. So yeah, interesting story. I still just, the skeptic in me is just like, okay, I wonder what's going on with our Russian and American leaders right now. Anyway,
don't we all? Yeah.
Don't get me started. But I'm very curious because it is theater, and there are days when we're the best of friends, not us, but our administration is the best of friends with the Russian administration, and then there are the days when we're not. So, yeah.
Indeed. So this week's special guest is Chris Newton-Smith, CEO of ISMS Online. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Rory. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great to speak with both of you.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. I think perhaps for the benefit of ourselves as well as our listeners, could you just say a few things about, what do you do and what your role is and what the ISMS Online does?
So I'm the CEO at ISMS Online, based here in the UK. ISMS Online is a software company, and we work with more than 1,000 customers around the world to help them to build and strengthen their information security, compliance, and AI management. And we do that through a combination of our software platform, along with our expert team who works with our customers, and some of the best practices, processes we've built out over the past years.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I know it's not necessarily an invitation to give a marketing pitch or whatever, but it is important that for companies that are perhaps less well known to many of our listeners, not the kind of the global hyperscale companies or the very largest security firms. It's always important to talk about that. And certainly you caught my attention, and your colleague did, when I had a chat with them about compliance, particularly the ISO compliance relating to AI, which was one of the reasons for following up with you. So, Christina.
Yeah. So Chris, thanks so much for coming on. We were chatting in the green room, if you will, before recording about our similar backgrounds and how we both hail from the North Country of Canada and had similar sort of childhood summers. And so it's so fun to meet another person who's had that kind of experience and experienced the terror and nightmare of black flies and mosquitoes as big as your head. So I feel bonded with you already.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a unique experience to meet someone else who's spent their weeks in the summer when they were kids portaging canoes across the lakes and kind of backcountry of northern Ontario. So it was really great to hear about that. You've had some of those same experiences.
Yeah, it's just a delightful memory in my life. And so lovely to meet another Canadian. I'm not really Canadian, but I like to say I'm part Canadian, but you are a real Canadian. So thank you so much for that lovely memory. So, we always start off with kind of a softball question, and it's something that most people can jump right in with, and that is what keeps you up at night. And so I'm just going to toss that to you and see where we go from there, Chris.
Thanks, Christina. I think one of the topics that certainly keeps me up at night, and I think also for our customers, is maybe the differential in the pace of rollout of AI services within companies, and then the pace or rollout of the
Mm,
kind of matching AI governance or safety systems to support those new AI services. I'm certainly a very early adopter of AI, and I think it's a fantastic set of tools for a company. But I think one of the challenges for organizations is, the rapid rollout or adoption. Sometimes it's called shadow AI, where within an
sure.
organization, you see lots of individual users going out, getting new tools in place, trying them out, and really not necessarily thinking through the potential impact on the company's data, safety, and services. And so one of the things that, it's really important to me and also to ISMS Online is, how do companies kind of close that gap in rollout at the same speed at which they're rolling out these new AI services or adopting them within the company? How do they make sure that they've got the supporting infrastructure or framework around governance in place to make sure that's done in a safe and successful way?
Well, and I don't know that we can yet. I know that there are frameworks, there are guardrails, there are companies looking at the shadow AI, looking at where data is leaking, where there's overprivilege, where there's bias. And so I think it's early days, and I'm hoping that you're going to tell me that you have the magic bullet in hand. But I think that it's such a moving target that it keeps me up at night as well. In fact, I was up quite a bit this last night and thinking about things like this because, especially with agentic AI, we've had many conversations about how challenging the agent to agent communication is. But just staying with Gen AI or AI overall, what are some of the solutions that exist in terms of governance, in terms of regulatory control, or even just guardrails that you're seeing?
You make a really good point that I think both in terms of the rollout of AI technology within enterprises and then also the rollout of governance or safety systems to support it. We're very much in the early stage of both of those.
Hmm.
But I guess the way I think about it is it's never too early to get started with implementing some of the supporting governance frameworks. And one of the
Yes.
ways that we've worked with companies to do that is through an ISO standard called ISO 42001, which is
Yes.
specifically about helping companies to implement an artificial intelligent management system. And the interesting thing about it is it's not just a technology solution because that has its own challenges right now with getting kind of AI to check on AI. It's really a combination of best practices from a technology perspective, but kind of equally addressing the people, the processes that companies need to be thinking about as they roll out these systems. So I wouldn't say that our company or any company in the space has a magic bullet. But at the same time, I think some of the capabilities that we've put together for our customers are really helping them to start down this journey of putting in place the infrastructure to support AI, and almost in a way giving them more confidence that as they roll out more AI capabilities, they can do so in a way that's aligned with their policies and their values within the organization.
Yeah, and I was really pleased that ISO came out with 42001 is the way I would say it, I guess, because I can never quite get the thousand in my mind, but 42001, and that came out really in the early days, and I
Yeah,
know they keep iterating on it. So it was like end of the year 2023, which was when OpenAI burst on the scene. So yeah, I'm happy for that. We're seeing so much shadow AI, kind of like we had shadow IT, shadow cloud, shadow SaaS, all of the different things. We're seeing a lot of startups that are coming onto the playing field, claiming that they can go into your environment and do an inventory of all of your shadow AI. I think they can do a lot of it and then identify where the users are using the AI tool or the model, and to then be able to look at the data leakage. So that's interesting to me. I think some of it is just marketing and not real yet, but I think we will get better and better at this. Certainly, securing AI, the infrastructure itself, is another piece of the puzzle. And then there's the adversarial use of AI and how rapidly there's adoption that we're seeing on the attacker side. So definitely cause for the need to be not just compliant, but secure. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of compliance, the EU AI Act is the first out of the door. We've got some guidelines here in the US, but tell me how quickly the EU AI Act was stood up and how quickly your team wrapped its arms around that in order to help your clients.
I think when you look at the EU AI Act or any of the pieces of legislation or regulation around AI that are coming out in different parts of the world, and there's certainly the EU. There's obviously, as you mentioned, a couple of different iterations on this within the US and different states. There's been something similar within Singapore and some of the other Asian markets. The way that we've kind of looked at it and looked at ISO 42001 is that ISO 42001 really gives, I think, a common framework that allows companies to address the risks and challenges around rolling out
Right.
AI, and almost then gives you the flexibility that as you then operate in different jurisdictions or geographies where you have to be compliant to specific pieces of legislation, it kind of gives you a common AI governance framework that can then be extended to meet specific requirements in individual markets. So another way of thinking about it and kind of mapping it back to information security, if you had a specific control in place around AI that you've put in place for ISO 42001, you may find that in different markets that control has to be adapted or measured in a specific way to comply with the legislation. But I guess the way we think about 42001 and the way we work with our customers is to kind of give you that common framework. And then as you need to go into different markets because of your business and where you operate, you've almost got that governance framework in place that you can have confidence that allows you to then comply with the EU AI Act or comply with a new requirement in the US. But you don't have to start from scratch each time. So it's not it's almost like a set of building blocks that you work with that allow you to then make sure that you've got the compliance in place for the specific market. But I think also, and I think this is very applicable for our discussion around AI. Often the discussion that I have now with prospective customers who are looking at working potentially with our company around AI governance and are also potentially looking at ISO 42001 is, they know that shadow AI is happening within their business. They know that their employees are wanting to innovate and try new things and look at these tools. And really what they're looking to do is to say, what's a kind of basic framework of governance that I can put in place, even if I don't necessarily have to, but I, as a general counsel or as a CISO or as a CEO or exec, I want to make sure that our customer data is secure. I want to make sure that my operations, in terms of how we use AI, is done in a way that aligns with the values and principles of the company. I want to make sure that from a legal perspective, we're not exposing ourselves to potential risk. And I think it's reasons like that I think drive companies to look at AI governance, because they don't want to be in the position where they just have to say, no, we can't use these new tools, which have tremendous benefits to their business in terms of productivity and new capabilities. But equally, they want to have confidence that as their organization is using those tools, they're doing so in a way that is almost compliant with their own plans and policies and values. And so I think that's where I don't really think of it as just another box to tick, although I completely understand why, it might be looked at in that way. I look at it more as a enabler for, the organization to roll out AI in a way that is kind of gives them confidence about how it's done. One of the analogies I often make is if you're, building a building and you're kind of putting in place the foundations, you're building this building, and then if you come afterwards and you kind of build and put in place the sprinklers and the safety systems after you've built the building, that's like the most expensive and least successful way of doing it. But if you start from the ground up when you're building the building and you kind of think through and you build the safety systems into it as you're constructing it, obviously it's a cheaper but also more effective way of doing it. And I think the analogy is quite similar with AI governance. It doesn't have to be a really heavyweight, complicated set of policies and procedures. It's about, as you roll out AI within your business, taking the time to think through the governance, the data management, the security aspects of it, which are often, people-driven aspects, and putting in place systems and tools to kind of help your staff to do that in a way that's successful and compliant. So for me, compliance is always about being an enabler for the business, allowing you to do new things in a kind of successful way, but doing it in a way that's also adheres to your policies and your values as a company. And if you can do it right from the beginning, I think it gives you a better chance of overall success.
Mm-hmm. Thinking ahead slightly, if we could do that, we talked about the EU AI Act. There's the US will have an act coming out. Other countries will. I know that some of the Southeast Asian countries are looking to see what the implications are, because obviously if they're trading with countries that also have things like GDPR and AI Acts, they have to be quite careful about how they trade in terms of certain business aspects. If we've got AI governance and compliance as this kind of patchwork of national rules, what challenge do you think this will pose in the future for businesses if you're trying to do business globally and you're navigating the uncertainty of, let's say, cross-border compliance? Where do you think that will go? And this isn't like a right or wrong answer. It's just, where do you think that's going to go?
It is, I think, will be an ongoing challenge for companies for the next years, that they will see different requirements, different regulations, different rules in different parts of the world. And as you said, especially if you're a more global business where you're exposed to these different regulations because of the scope of your operations. But I do draw a parallel. I mean, there's similar parallels in the infosecurity world. And I think, as an organization, I think what's important is that you build a kind of common framework of AI governance in the same way that you do for information security compliance, and one that is based on a set of controls that are suitable for your business and that kind of cover the scope of the AI that you're rolling out. And then you kind of leverage those controls and adapt them for each of the individual markets. And, obviously working with companies like ISMS Online, but also others, we kind of help you to do that, because we both understand the scope of those different markets, but also the platforms or the software is designed in a way to kind of solve this problem for you. Not completely, because of course you still need to do the work of understanding that what needs to be adapted for your specific use cases. But more generally, once you've got a good framework of controls and policies around AI governance in place, we then can help you to look at how those can be extended to be compatible in those different markets. And I think that's the same for other GRC platforms as well. So it gives you I think a solid framework, and one that you can then extend into specific use cases or markets. And as I said, you do see a similar parallel in infosecurity. How you do certain infosecurity controls, I would argue, in a lot of places, ISO 27001 gives you a great framework or starting point, but then you still need to comply with specific regulations in India or in Singapore and other markets. But you have the confidence that you've got 27001 supporting all of that as a starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Christina, yeah, I cut you off before, so
Yeah, no. I was going to say that I think it's a great ideal to intend to build the building or the structure with everything in place, all of your blueprints, and do the sprinklers at the appropriate time, to Chris's point. But we're always chasing new technology with security, right? And I think AI is another example of where we're behind on the securing both of the infrastructure and the usage of AI. And I do agree with you, Chris, even though I was playing a little bit of a devil's advocate. I do agree with you that having ISO 42001, there, I got it right this time. It always makes me think of 2001 Space Odyssey, which is why I stumble. but I think having that as a structure is a great blueprint for building the building. And I've read some of it. I haven't probably dipped in as much as you have. But to Rory's point, also this patchwork, as we start to see different regulations come to the forefront, potentially different frameworks, NIST and others coming out with their risk management frameworks on AI, for example, there's going to be some whiplash. And there's also going to be throwing the baby out with the bath sometimes. And that, I think, will be maddening. But I think basically I really agree. Starting with one that is a very strong standard like ISO, and then amending that as you go forward is a good plan.
Well, that's been a really great discussion, Chris. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time. Always good to get a new angle on some of these discussion points, and clearly you're obviously able to bring that. So thanks again for coming on. Appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll talk with you again soon.
Thanks, Rory. Thanks, Christina. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and look forward to chatting again in the future. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Chris.
Fine, on that note, we should probably wrap the show up. Christina, thanks again. That's another great show, and fantastic chatting with you and the guests. So if you'd like to leave us a message, dear listeners, and if you'd like to leave some feedback in that message, you can do so in a couple of different ways. First of all, you can do so through SpeakPipe, which is www.speakpipe.com/cybersidekicks, where you can leave a voicemail, 90-second max, and we'll share any messages that are not too spicy or derogatory in the next episode that we get.
If you're like us, you're boomers, and you wanted to send us an email, yes, we do still check our emails. You can reach me at Christina@richmondadvisorygroup.com, and Rory.
Yes, you can contact me, Rory, at richmondadvisorygroup.com.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Great, and it'd be great if you could join us again next week for the next episode. And thanks again for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye now.